Well, I hope you're having a great day today. It is the 4th of January, so we're already taking some steps into the new year here. So hopefully everybody's doing well. Hopefully everybody had a great Christmas and New Year's vacation. And now that it's in our rearview mirror, we have nothing but 2021 to look forward to. Now, if this is your first time ever listening to Search for Signs, my name is Gary Willing. I'd like to welcome you. I'd like to thank you. We have over 300 videos where we talk about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. We take a deeper look at who and what Maitreya is, of course. We also talk about why are the Masters returning now to the everyday world, and what does it mean? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Well, we just don't know until we start talking about it. And that's why we like to ask questions, and I always invite people to ask questions, and even you. Maybe the first-time listener has a question or two about what we talk about here, and you can always post your question as a comment. And then look for your answer in the next video. Now, of course, we talk about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. We talk about the current events of the time, things like political divisions, economic uncertainty, social unrest, of course, things like the coronavirus, other things. We tie it into the fact that there is still hope out there. It might look bleak from time to time, but it was looking pretty rough for 2020, but we made it through, right? Hey, I mean, you did too if you're still listening to this video. Now, also, and this is very important, the reason why I named this channel Search for Signs is because originally it was really about the many miracle signs that were going on in and around the world for decades. And what does that mean? Does that mean that they're linked because they're happening to nearly every different type of religious groups, even people of no religion, are having their own miracle signs? So these miracle signs are not just here to confirm one secular belief. So therefore, it might be something broader than that. And if they're linked, what does it mean? And is it, most people who experience these miracles firsthand, of course, it starts to regenerate hope in them. They start to maybe have a different outlook on the future and so forth, because how often do you see an icon start to weep blood? Or how often do you see a UFO in the sky? How often do you maybe perhaps pick up a hitchhiker and then they tell you the Christ is back on the world and they disappeared? Not very often, right? So when it happens to these people, they're like, wow, something extraordinary might be afoot. And if these miracles are happening all over the world to all different types of people, does it mean that the teacher who at one time made a promise to every religious group to come back and thus continue the teaching, show the humanity the way forward? Now, each religious group, of course, has their own interpretation of the coming of the teacher. The Christians await the Christ, the Muslims await the Imam Mahdi, the Hindus await the Kalki Avatar, Buddhists are awaiting the fifth Buddha, and of course the Jewish people have been waiting longer than most for the Messiah to come back. They missed him as Jesus, but now they get a second chance at this go-around. Now, there's also a vast segment of society that really doesn't really have a religious belief to speak of. They might be spiritual, they might not, right? But they're a part of the whole humanity group, so they're included on that as well. So the teacher's here to teach all of us the way forward. And the reason why the Masters are returning now is because we're moving out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. Now, this isn't a astronomical woo-woo kind of wishful thinking. This is an astronomical fact that our sun moves out of alignment from each one of the constellations after about 2,000 years and moves every day more and more into alignment with a new constellation. Now, just consider this for a second. It's just something to kind of consider, is that all in life is energy. And science, quantum physics even, is starting to prove more and more the reality that everything is energy. So these constellations are no exception. They emit a light, they emit an energy that creates the quality of the civilization in which we live in. If you have any doubts about that, let's take a look over the last 2,000 years. Okay, now Jesus, who was the teacher for the then age of Pisces, which was a new age, the coming new age when he was alive, spoke about love, spoke about peace, of course, spoke very briefly about the law of cause and effect. But also, as he was living his life, he was starting to teach people a new way of thinking and relating that they weren't quite, used to thinking about. Now, the writers of the Bible knew that Jesus was the teacher for the age of Pisces. And that's the reason why they wrote in all these different symbols of the fish in reference to the disciples, in reference to Jesus' life and so forth, as a oblique kind of symbol to symbolize people, because symbols are a way of communicating, whether you're aware of it or not. And ages ago, they were very much a part of the way that humanity communicated with one another were symbols. So the symbol for the constellation Pisces is what? The fish. And that's the reason why the early Christian writers wrote into the Bible those symbols of the fish. Now, the coming age, and let me go back. So that quality of the Piscean energy is very separate. It creates a powerful, potent individual, a powerful, potent ideal that the individual might have toward life, toward religion, spirituality, toward the way that they interact with other people and so forth, which also, over the last 2,000 years, helped to build the structures of which we're so accustomed to living in today. So if you look economically, let's just talk a little bit about that structure, or maybe even politics. You can kind of translate it into other structures if you want to. But economically, our structures, capitalism, even communism, even socialism to some degree, were built under the light of Pisces. So therefore, the qualities of those structures are more based on supporting the individual. Now what happened is you have some individuals that are quite aggressively ambitious, and therefore they help to kind of build the structures to help suit and support their own power base, right? That's the reason why economically, politically, socially even, in the healthcare structures and so forth, those structures are there to support the few at the expense of the many. Now that's humanity's misuse of the energies of Pisces. They're divine qualities, just like the qualities that are starting to come in more and more every day of the energies of Aquarius, which is synthesis, brotherhood, cooperation, of course, peace, sharing. But these are just terms, and for the most part, most of us are unaware of what those terms really mean in practical everyday life. So, the big question on this channel that we like to look at and talk about and inquire about and get to know a little bit more about and so forth is, why are the masters returning now? Well, they're here because they are here to help humanity build the structures of the new, of the age of the energies of Aquarius, to help support peace, sharing, justice, cooperation. Ideals that we would think of as being quite foreign, maybe godlike in some way, but also very so lofty that there's no way we could ever ground them in reality. Now, Maitreya will tell us, because he's been living in the United States. He's been living in the United Kingdom. Excuse me. I keep saying the United States, but I'm living in the United States, so forgive us for always relating everything back to the United States. I'm just as guilty of it as most Americans are. Now, if I was from Texas, I would refer to everything back to Texas. But anyway, so Maitreya has been living in London since July 19th, 1977, and has been working behind the scenes since then to help create the climate, help create the situation to where humanity can take a giant leap forward into this new age of Aquarius. So the process for Maitreya to get to the point where he is right now on TV, but not claiming to be Maitreya, just claiming to be an ordinary person, if you can follow all this, took eons. But the apex of it has been since he's been living in a modern city in London since July 19th, 1977. To help build the climate of hope, the expectation of a teacher coming back. That's why these signs are going on, and they have been going on for decades, to help the faithful, those people maybe who are looking for hope in some kind of way, to help rekindle their hope, because humanity needs hope, but yet there's a lot of hope out there. And the biggest hope is the fact that humanity is going to learn how to create peace in a very real sense. Now, it starts with the principle of sharing. And I like to talk about this at the beginning of every video now, because it's the most important thing that we talk about, Maitreya's priorities. And the single biggest priority that Maitreya is saying that humanity must do is we must create peace because our very survival depends on it. But it's also really, if you were to break it down even more like a fraction, the biggest priority that humanity can do right now is create the principle of sharing. He puts it like this: without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. Without peace, there could be no future for humanity. So, from the teacher's point of view, it's crucial. We have to create the principle of sharing. Now, the reason why you might be thinking, why am I listening to this video? Well, we all are a part of creating peace on this planet. You know, you might not know what to do, you might not know what you have to offer, but you have something to offer that no one else has that can help change the situation for all of us on this planet. You just have to do something. You have to find out what it is, and then you have to do something about it, right? But we all have to look at the principle of sharing and help to convince our world leaders to see the same necessity of it. Now, Maitreya is here to help just do exactly what the Buddha predicted: inspire and galvanize humanity to build a brilliant golden civilization based on righteousness and truth. That righteousness and truth is that we are one, that there is no separation between any one of us, and that we must start to live like this. We must start to see each other as one, not as separate, as the qualities of Pisces led us to believe, but also, and just as important, we have to build structures that help support that. So, Maitreya says, without sharing, there can be no justice. Without justice, there can be no peace. Without peace, there can be no future. But real quick, let's take a look, before we get into the question, let's take a deeper look into what sharing is, okay? Because so many people are so confused about sharing that they even react quite negatively to that term when it's presented to them to consider, because they're so used to thinking in one of three ways, either in capitalistic ways, communistic ways, or socialistic ways. And the principle of sharing transcends isms of all kinds. It's a really natural way that we should all be living anyway, because this is how, if we could see life on the higher planets and the way the cosmos works, it's all based on sharing. It never ends. So unfortunately, the example I'm going to give you about how effective the principle of sharing was when we actually did it lasted but just a brief time. But hopefully, knock on wood, in the future, we will start to look to Maitreya for advice and take his advice that the principle of sharing is key. It's key to life on this planet. And so now it transcends all isms. So it's not capitalism, and it's not socialism, and it's not communism. So it's important for us not to look at it from that perspective. It's better to look at it the way that the United States helped Europe right after World War II. With the Marshall Plan, the Secretary of State, George C. Marshall, under President Truman, along with a lot of the world leaders, saw that if they didn't help Europe out right after World War II, it was going to be disastrous for Europe. Maybe they could either go into either a dark age with anarchy running around because there was not a lot of governments that were in place. The infrastructure wasn't there, so it could create anarchy in Europe. It could also have created a whole other war. And we would have had to have another, instead of just World War I or World War II, it could have been World War I, World War II, and World War III, which World War III would have more than likely involved nuclear weapons because we had already developed it, right? So that would have been disastrous for everybody. So he presented to the powers that be here in the United States the way that we could help them, the best way we could help them is rather than just giving them money, throwing money at the problem like we like to do now, let's take the excesses that are sitting there wasting, doing nothing, and freely give it to them and let them use it and see what happens, which he did. And what did it do? It rebuilt their schools, it rebuilt their roads, it rebuilt their bridges, rebuilt their factories and so forth, buildings. It got the European people back on their feet. It helped to feed the people immediately and so forth, clothe them, give them shelter in the wintertime and so forth. So that stabilized Europe economically and politically and socially. And then as they started to create excesses for themselves, well, they gave it back as payment. And it created an economic boom here in the United States not long after that. So the initial effect of the principle of sharing was quite good because it rebuilt Europe and it created an economic boom. And when I read the Benjamin Crumb Master's article about sharing for peace, he talks about how when men share, they grow. So, even countries are the same way. So it helped in a very positive way the United States for sharing. We didn't lose anything. We actually gained more than we gave in this process. But the long-term effect, the intangible long-term effect of it, is even being affected today, even though we just did the principle of sharing for just a little bit of time, because we trust those nations. Those nations trust the United States better than any other nations on the planet. So we have evidence in real time, historical evidence, of the positive effects of the principle of sharing initially, but also the fact that the principle of sharing does create peace. It creates trust. It creates goodwill amongst nations. And we need this to tackle the just as big of a problem, the global problem of the environment. Now, the reason why it's not Maitreya's first priority initially, it's not his priority, right? But we can't tackle the environmental problem until nations start to trust one another. And that's the reason why the principle of sharing is so crucial. It already shows us that it does create trust. It already shows us that it does create goodwill, right? I mean, I just gave you an example of it. And if we did it globally, it would start to do the same thing with all these other nations, and then we could tackle the environment properly. And it will, probably quite rapidly too. So let's get on into the questions. And again, like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them by posting your question as a comment. You can also email me at searchforsigns@mail.com. But thank you. All right. Now, the first and only person to have a question has been asking questions quite a bit, and his questions have been quite thought-provoking. So I really want to thank him personally from the bottom of my heart for continuing to ask questions. Okay. So it says, have you ever seen a ghost? Have you ever had telepathic experience with another human? I know you have had telepathic experiences with Maitreya, but I mean with another living, mortal human. I guess Maitreya could be considered a ghost since he was once human, but I mean, have you ever seen a ghost, a regular, normal human? Okay. Have you ever had dreams or premonitions of events before they happened? I am asking all of this because I'm interested in the paranormal. Okay, so have I ever seen a ghost? No. Have I ever had telepathic experience with another human? Yes, of course, we all have, whether we realize it or not. Sometimes it's an emotional impression. Sometimes it might be actually a literal word sometimes, but in terms of like real telepathy, like it's going to be in the future where I could communicate with somebody unencumbered on the other side of the planet, well, of course, no. But yes, I've had telepathic experiences. One instance was... well, let me go back. I won't say that one. That was actually, you won't understand why I'm saying it, but it was pretty funny. But a lot of times you can use your intuition and you can kind of intuit events that could possibly happen in terms of, maybe I don't know if I'm necessarily seeing the future per se. I mean, I have had things work out and I knew they were going to work out and I had a heartfelt response that they were work out, and they did. Whether I actually saw the event, I don't know, or if I intuited the future aspect of it and then saw how the dots were connecting and it happened that way. So it was kind of a combination of my intellectual mind and my intuitive mind. Maybe I think it's more of a process like that for me. But no, I've never seen a ghost. I do think ghosts exist, but I've never seen one, and I used to think when I was a kid, I used to think I see a ghost all the time, but I never did. Now, I have had dreams or premonitions, like I said, events that are about to happen, and they did sometimes. Now, in terms of Maitreya being a ghost, he's not a ghost. Okay, so this is something that I want to kind of clear up, is people such as myself have had experiences with Maitreya. They may or may not have seen the way that he looks and how he looks on TV now. He can look like a man, a woman, any particular race, age, build, that kind of thing, hair color, at any time. Any one of these masters can create it. Now, what happens is, and this is, so when I say I see Maitreya, I've actually seen a familiar of him. Now, the way it works is Maitreya has been living in London since 1977, so he is in a physical body. You can actually go to London, and if you knew how to find him, you could see him. Okay, and there are people who are in the Asian community of London who were starting to think that he was the Imam Mahdi. There was rumors going around the Brick Lane community of London that the Imam Mahdi lived there, and they were talking about Maitreya. Now Maitreya has not claimed to be the Imam Mahdi, and so if somebody asked him, he would not say yes or no. But you can touch him, and he's just as real as I am. Now his body was created by thought, so he wasn't born in the typical way that you and I were, but he or any one of these masters have control over basically space and matter. So they can create a car by thought, they can create their clothes by thought, they can look a certain way or whatever like this. Now, a familiar, from what I understand, I mean, it's obviously a lot more complex than this. This is just my own, way of doing it. Is Maitreya was always in London when I saw him. He created a body of a person that looked a certain way, that was only there because Maitreya created him mentally for me. And it's not just for me, it's other people have had these same experiences. So it wasn't a ghost. I mean, the times that I saw Maitreya, he was physical too. So, but he didn't look how Maitreya looked. Now, the thing that kind of set it apart for me was his eyes were one giveaway. The other part was some of the things that he said triggered things. It might have been a thought that I had weeks ago or a few days ago, and he quoted what I had thought, or he might have, speaking of telepathic communication, I might have thought something and he immediately reiterated it to me verbatim, that led me to believe that he wasn't just an ordinary person. And other times it was just the quality of his energy was far different, because a master can send their love and their energy through this familiar to the person. So when people have angel experiences, an authentic angel experience, maybe somebody saves them in an accident or rescues them or comforts them while they're hurt or whatever like this, or they're going through a very, very difficult time in their life for whatever reason, and they just happen to see somebody at a time that said something to them in a way that totally uplifted them and got them through that experience. More than likely, it was one of these masters as a familiar. The master is wherever they are in the world, right? And created this because they're aware of what's going on in everybody's life all around the world. Maitreya is aware of everybody's thoughts and feelings and emotions and what's going on in their life all around the world, just like all these other masters are. And for whatever reason, decided to help the person or teach the person something or something like this. But rather than them going themselves, they send a familiar. They create a familiar, and they can do it all over the world at different times too. So it doesn't have to just be one at a time. So, for instance, but Maitreya is a master, and he's the master of all the masters. So he's not a new rookie master like the master Djwal Khul was when he was writing those articles through Alice Bailey, he considered himself to be a rookie. But Maitreya is incredibly old. Now, if you saw him, you would, and when we see him on TV, he's not going to age. But he could be literally speaking on TV right now, not claiming to be Maitreya, but just claiming to be an ordinary person, right? And at the same time, create a dozen or however many familiars he wants all over the world, helping whatever it is, saving people from accidents, comforting them if they're dying, those kind of things. Giving somebody a dream experience, speaking to other masters on other planets, and he's doing this all while he's speaking on TV. He could put a ring of light around the planet to help save us from some cosmic event that we are totally ignorant of and unaware of happening, and be all the while being totally at peace, relaxed, and joyful. So the consciousness of a master, we have no idea. And I don't have any idea of the conscious level of a master and what they can see, how their experiences are moment to moment. We won't know until we get to that level. But they look, when we see Maitreya out in public, he will look just as real and just as normal as anybody else. But they can, he could walk into a room with a bunch of American businessmen or politicians and wear a business suit and think it, and it would look like a designer designed the suit, right? But he did it all by thought. And then he could walk into another room and talk to a bunch of Arab sheiks and create a new clothes for himself that look totally different, that are appropriate for the group of people that he's speaking to. And all the while doing all this other stuff, an infinite number of other things, helping, healing, loving, sending love out and blessings out to be. I mean, just, we don't know the level of consciousness of these masters, moment to moment, how they live. But they live totally in the now. They see past, present, and future all happening now, right? They have no fear. They know nothing but love. They know nothing but unity, all the while serving and helping humanity moment to moment. I mean, and that's the simplest way that I could explain it. So hopefully that clears it up, because he's not a ghost and he's not a figment of anybody's imagination. And even people like Benjamin Creme demanded proof from their masters. Alice Bailey demanded proof from her master. And both masters in both instances sent Alice Bailey and Benjamin Creme a picture of themselves. They put it in the mail and mailed it to him. So the problem for humanity is that we knew about the masters. We experienced their teachings moment to moment. We saw them in public eons and eons ago. But there was a situation, I don't want to get into too much because this video is already getting too long, but the idea, the memory of the masters is long since forgotten. But yet they've never left. They've been helping humanity from behind the scenes with their disciples for eons. Now it's time for them to come out. And where people get so triggered because of their religious beliefs is they've totally forgotten the truth of the fact that there's a kingdom above humanity called the Masters of Wisdom. Now, it's natural to have that kind of reaction. It's because they haven't been taught it. There's no history about the masters. There's nothing. In time, it will be quite normal for people to see these people and these masters and interact with them. It will help us, each one of us, know the truth of ourselves as souls and our personal potential. Just as Jesus said, very simply to his disciples, greater things than this shall you do yourself. It couldn't be simpler, but yet so simple that most religious theologians and followers of Jesus totally forget about that thing. That one saying that Jesus said. But the masters are here to show us that we're just like them. It's just going to be a matter of time before we learn and know and be able to manifest the truth about ourselves as souls moment to moment, just as they do. So they're not doing anything different or extraordinary that we can't do. It's just we don't have that ability yet because we're not seeing ourselves as the truth of who we are. It starts with knowing ourselves as one. So the masters will be teaching us very gently, very patiently, the way forward, because it's for the truth of oneness. And if you've listened to the video this long, this is an important part. So hopefully you're hearing this. The most important thing that the masters are going to teach us is that we're one. They're going to show us the truth of that matter. We've lost even the truth of that. So, and when you talk about oneness and sharing, people see that as evil. It's no evil to it. That's the truth of life, is that we are one, that we should be living in peace, that we should be living within sharing with one another as a family. Shouldn't have any fear of our neighbors or ourselves, as Maitreya says. Living day to day, as each day is a joyful, creative gift from God, and living it like that, and not just as an ideal, but living life moment to moment like that, very creatively, very joyfully, with all the knowledge that the masters have, with all the love and wisdom of the masters, with experiencing all the healing and potential of the entire cosmos, moment to moment. But we've isolated and separated ourselves so much that we don't even, a lot of us get even upset about the thought that we're one. That's the lie. That's the illusion. So I'm actually running out of time. I wanted to read one of Benjamin Creme's Masters articles, but I'll just read a bit of it, and then we'll hopefully swing back and talk about this later. But anyway, so this little bit is called Sharing for Peace, and like I said, I'll just read an excerpt of it. It says, when a man shares, he grows. Little attention has been given until now to this simple truth. For many, sharing comes naturally, as a matter of course. For others, however, the concept is alien and fraught with suspicion and pain. To these, what theirs is theirs almost by divine right, while to share is foreign and absurd. How then could Can the world move in the direction of sharing and redistribution prerequisites for world peace? And that's the question I'm going to leave us with. Okay, so how do we do that? Well, that's why Maitreya is here, to show us that we need to do it. We have to see it as our very survival depends on it. So hopefully this all helps, and hopefully I answered the questions, and I look forward to more questions in the future. You take care, and everybody have a great day. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.